Hey everybody, my name is Jay, and we're talking about Sophie today. If you haven't watched my video titled I Got Every Character in Soul Calibur 6 to S rank and this is how I did it yet, please do so, as I'll be going through this character in the same format that I discussed topics in that video, and I'd rather not make the same disclaimers in each video. Sophie was a lot of fun for me and has amazing fundamental strengths. This was one of the easiest and quickest runs I had to S rank, lasting only 8 days to get from D1 to S1. Eventually, I'll admit, Sophie can get outclassed when it comes to neutral pokes and mid-range frames, which he's normally supposed to be good at, but if you can pay attention to whip punishes and appropriate block punishes, you'll find that there's really no better character in the whole game for something like that. If you're trying to learn fundamental competencies for Soul Calibur in general, you can even transfer Sophie's skills from game to game. Now, when it comes to block punishes, you don't have anything for -10. For -12, you got KK. For -14, you got 236B. -16, 236B. For -18, same thing. So if you're looking for a character to play where you'd like to work on your block punishment, this is really the character for you. As anyone who's played against Sophie before will come to expect, I'm going to be talking a lot about 236B4 a whole lot during this character run-through, aka Stab. KK is going to be better than AA for a lot of your -12 punishes, though sometimes it can be a bit range-dependent. After that, you can basically focus entirely on Stab. Knowing what is -14 and not is going to be incredibly important for this character, and learning Sophie can be a great way to introduce yourself to block punishment and frames in general if you're first starting out. 66K is technically going to be the optimal -16, but again, if you'd rather just keep things simple, going with Stab the whole time after -12 is perfectly reasonable. You stab the launchers, you stab the low pokes, you stab everything on block to start, and then you tone it down when you find the move that you're trying to block punish, Stab just isn't working. That's when you start walking it back. You do things like KK, and then you find that the move isn't unsafe at all, so you start just using neutralish type pokes. You just continue to walk it back and repeat the same situation until you have an understanding on all the moves, whichever character tends to throw at you, and which ones can be consistently punished. When it comes to the suite of wall rising moves, Sophie honestly doesn't change, as the Stab can be done both standing and crouching, so hey. Similar to standing, your -12 is going to be a bit different than Stab. You're going to want wall rising B+K, so it's a bit of an awkward kind of thing, but starting to use this for your -12 punish for crouching is going to immediately separate you from other novice Sophie players that tend to do stuff like this, which just isn't fast enough, or what have you. And then you can get used to the moves that you can punish further with Stab. Another situation where you wouldn't want to go with Stab as your punish would be if you're specifically ducking a grab, where you have 4A+B lethal hit instead. Otherwise, going with Stab to punish lows more than -12 and ducking highs is a good way to go. You technically have a lethal hit specifically for ducking highs as well in 236K, but the input can make it a bit harder to pull off when you're just starting out, and obviously the animation for highs in general doesn't make it as easy as grabs to confirm when a lethal hit is available to you. As you can tell, Sophie is incentivized pretty heavily to duck often, as your reward is much higher than most. Ducking can certainly be reckless in many places, but starting out with your high rewards in mind can help you in paying attention to when the opponent is giving you these opportunities. It's not necessarily about guessing on a duck randomly, it's more about observing how mashy and grabby your opponent is being and potentially setting them up in a place where they clearly have a default attack they go for. If it's something that you can lethal hit, then great. Otherwise, Stab is the way to go. This kind of game plan is one of the main things I find rewarding in playing Sophie, so it's definitely worth a look. Oki for Sophie is fairly simple, but for the most part isn't particularly rewarding. If all you're looking for is something to stop people from rolling, you got 1K, which is a move I'll be talking about a lot later on. And you've also got 66B as a force block in some spots. But it's more of a pressure move, 66B that is, more of a pressure move rather than trying to net damage, as it's kind of slow enough that people can see you're going for it and block without much of an issue. teching back and sidestepping type people can be caught by things like 6XA or 1K again, just like a run of 1K. For the most part, I'm not impressed by the OP options all that much, but it's important to note that Sophie gets a lot of non-techable knockdowns right in front of her, so lots of opportunities for small damage rather than just a few opportunities for big damage, right? Sophie's grab range is pretty disappointing. So the idea is that you'll really have to pepper with small hits a lot in order to get people to stop mashing and moving. And you'll probably have to use 6XB a lot to get them to stop ducking, as her mids aren't necessarily that scary on normal hits. Otherwise, Sophie's grabs are really great. You've got your forward-forward command grab, you've got your regular forward grab, you've got back grab, which can give you a second hit you can elect to do for more damage. Also gets a lethal hit on 4 successful GIs. And you're basically just trying to set up your right side throw for obvious reasons. I personally found people were ducking against my Sophie a lot, even right at the start. So the threat of the grabs can often be present without conditioning the opponent right at the onset, so it's more of a matter of using the right amount of mids to scare them into standing than the other way around, which is kind of inverse to what's normal for the other characters. So, when it comes to the basic way that I played Sophie, it essentially centered around 2 moves, 1K and 6XB. 1K is really great. It's an unseeable, hoary low kick that gives you a knockdown on counter hit and catches step and forces people to crouch, and it gets around a lot of auto GIs being a kick and all that. It's got great range. You can go on and on about this move. I used this move literally any time I wanted to instigate a little bit of damage and force my opponent to worry about my game plan. You can use it on OP, you use it in neutral, you use it when you have frame advantage, you use it when people statue block. The move is unsafe on block, so pay attention to when people are twitch ducking and actually punishing you for it. And it's negative on hit, so you have to get used to how your opponent reacts afterwards. Rarely do you want to follow this up with a mash after this move. This is assuming we're talking about normal hit where you're not getting a knockdown, because it's just simply too predictable. I honestly don't know how many Sophies I've seen try to disrespect frames in these neutral type spots, like post 1K on normal hit, and I strongly recommend just playing the game by the frames, as it'll be a larger reward for you in the long run. Allow the opponent to reset to neutral if they want to back up post 1K on normal hit. Notice that the opponent is standing there after 1K, and you can just do it again. And if they mash, that's when you just have to respect their frame advantage, at least until you get comfortable enough to start using things like Sophie's auto GIs, or you could just try to move away so you can get some sort of a whip punish. 6XB is basically the mid you want to use as a run-up delayed mid, or on OP to punish people trying to get away from your 1K or your grabs. On hit, you want the double 2-3-6B into 4-4B. It's nice damage. Frankly, more important than the damage on hit is the pushback that you're getting on block. The whole point of the move is to push Sophie out enough to get a whiff punish with 2-3-6, 2-3-6B if they try to mash on you afterwards. This is a common tactic for a lot of Sophie gameplay. You kind of just do a safe move on block, and then you push back enough to where eventually you set up for a whiff punish with your 2-3-6, 2-3-6B. Other neutral moves I liked a lot included 4B, you got 6K, you got 4A plus B, and 6B plus K. All of them do okay damage, they're great in terms of frames. There's a knockdown on counter hit with things like 6K and 6B plus K, and they set up frame situations that give you opportunities to read your opponent. If I needed to chase my opponent from farther away, 6XA was a solid hoary mid with a strong hitbox, but it's a bit unsafe. And I loved 2-3-6A plus B. I feel like this move is massively underrated. It's just a huge swath of hitboxes that are very difficult to deal with in any sort of meaningful way. 2-2B is a fair panic button for when the opponent's pressure gets too tough, but used as sparingly as possible due to how unsafe it can be. you want to try to gauge how the opponent is pressuring you to see if it's, like, tempered, meaning if they're trying to read that you're about to do a panic button like 2-2-B, rather than they're wanting to mash buttons multiple times in a row constantly. If they lay off at some point, then you can take back your turn with safer things, perhaps like a 1K or even just walking away. Like I said, the basic Sophie game plan is incredibly simple and effective. Good neutral pokes for OK damage, good grabs, 1K to annoy them, and eventually all of that sets up for what you actually want to do. You want to do lots of stats. Learning Sophie will help reward you for knowing frames, it'll make your fundamentals overall much stronger, and one of the nice things about it is that that means you can transfer those Sophie skills from Soul Calibur game to Soul Calibur game. Perhaps even other fighting games as well if you focus on them enough. So, very highly transferable skills. But yeah, that's going to be my Sophie video. Let me know how your Sophie adventure works out for you. Do all the regular YouTube things of liking and subscribing. And I'll talk to you guys next time, yeah? Thanks very much.